What's going on, YouTube? It's your boy Yuki Skull. Bringing you guys yet another YouTube video. Super excited to do another video around like the voiceless voice archetype. I think it's a really good meta call and pick for this format with all the different Ryzeal variant decks, Ryzeal Fiendsmith going around the format, post crossover breakers, as well as Malice. I think we have a pretty good Malice matchup against that deck with voiceless voice. I thought to bring you guys just some role play. I want this to be like a conversational YouTube video. I brought you guys one of my recordings on Duelbook with a Fiendsmith Ryzeal player. So I've been finding as I've been testing this deck, some of our toughest matchups are definitely going to be the new decks, such as Ryzeal and Malice. But I think the Fiendsmith Ryzeal deck is exceptionally resilient just due to the Fiendsmith engine and how easily the Ryzeal package can just spit out bodies and go into the rank 4 XC's plays. So feel free to like, comment, subscribe. I feel like I'm by no means like an expert when it comes to the voiceless voice archetype. I would say I am good, probably above average in terms of my plays and my rationale. But definitely not, I probably wouldn't put myself anywhere close to, like Prophecy Wiz or anything like that. Shout outs to Prophecy Wiz. Got to meet him actually at YCS Niagara, which was pretty cool. So yeah, happy to have make this a conversational piece. Please like, comment, subscribe. Drop in some comments in terms of certain areas in the gameplay where, perhaps I could have played better, or perhaps I did do something that was quite good and quite clever. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and actually walk you guys through play by play this matchup against Fiendsmith Ryzeal with my Voices Voice deck, and then we'll go over some commentary, and then at the very end, I'll show you guys what I'm thinking about in terms of my deck list for this upcoming format, why that is, and I actually probably will be taking this deck list out to a tier 2 event at regionals probably in the next month or so. So I'm very excited to bring you guys this video. Let's get right in. It looks like we do win the dice, which is quite good and important. So it looks like right off the get-go, we start off with Saphira just to bait out any potential Ash Blossoms or even Bells. Right off the bat, I've got low talents, which I think is going to be a really, really key card to main this format, guys. So I am playing 2 copies in a deck of 42, and I'll show you guys what my list is after, as mentioned. We got Brick, and then we got some turn 3 set, uh, resource. I find like opening the Radiance isn't too bad. I hate opening the Prayers, but opening the Radiance does open up for a pretty good grind game, I find, turn 3. So right off the bat, we opened up with Sephiroth to basically bait out any Ash Blossoms. And it looks like he's good. He doesn't have anything. Obviously, he's got the Ice Ryzeal, Fiendsmith Track, Bonfire, Ogre, as well as the Molcharmi Fuvalos. Luckily for us, the Molcharmi Fuvalos is essentially a dead card for them. It's not going to hurt them, but I think I actually do play into this a bit, and I'll explain to you guys why that is. In hindsight, I don't think I needed to, but we'll get there. You guys will see what I mean. Lego Severe Effect to Ritual right off the bat. So this is the line, guys, to play through Impulse. Obviously, the only deck right now that's worth playing that can play Impulse is probably Malice. So I definitely checked, I checked that basically right there, and then I went straight for the Saphira play because I can just dump my low and then go for my Skull Guardian. So we go low, chain 1, and then 2, we go Skull Guardian. I think he ogres here, which is a big mistake. You never ogre that just because what he doesn't recognize is the fact that we've got prayers in the graveyard. So essentially, it's actually a wasted hand drop. He wasted his ogre and he also wasted his Fuvalo. So right off the bat, he's not playing the best. He's not like the highest ranked player. But I think in his mind, if he doesn't shotgun this now and waste that resource in my graveyard, he's going to miss timing completely because the low is going to be on the field. And then now essentially the Skull Guardian can check that Ghost Ogre that's in his hand. If I was him, I'd probably hold it because then it just means that I don't necessarily know exactly 100% what's in his hand, but we'll get there. Also, another fact is like he's playing into talents already, which is going to be quite detrimental for him. So he pops it, and then it looks like I do a little bit of a misclick there. That's supposed to be low that comes out the grave, not the Skull Guardian. Very important here that I go prayers chain link one, low chain link two. The reason is if they haven't done so already, if they decided that they didn't want to Ash the Saphira for whatever reason, you're essentially insulating your prayers yet again, right? You're playing in a way that's always constantly blocking any certain hand traps that you might lose to. Because nothing actually stops low unless they have opened their impermanence or their veilers. But we kind of already know that he doesn't have it because he decided to ogre my Skull Guardian. So we already made the assumption that okay, he's kind of running low on gas here when it comes to hand traps. Cool. So you asked him what the chain links are. I tell him, dude, as you saw them, chain link one prayers, chain link two low. I told him as you saw him. This guy, by the way, guys, he's gonna start talking a lot of smack. All right, he's gonna start talking a lot of smack my way. He's gonna start calling me names. He's gonna call me an idiot. We do end up calling the judges. They don't come, but we are gonna absolutely take this home, and he's gonna get exceptionally furious in the fact that he's gonna lose. So he's quite good here. He changed the Fuvalos to the special summon of a potential other ritual, which was 100% correct. So he did play into it in that sense. So he does get a draw. Looks like he draws a dud, which is the cross. And here I go talents to take a look at his hand, and I think I get rid of the tract, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, I called tract, it seems. So he gets rid of the tract. Excellent. I think the rationale between me, by the way, guys, getting rid of the tract is when we go full Fiendsmith board, including your Skull Guardian, your Cerevis that could potentially can be looped with the help of Radiance or even actually your blessings. Sorry, your blessings. It essentially checks a lot of their engine and non-engine. So their non-engine is checked by Skull Guardian. And then your Cerevis can check for any of their overlay plays where they go, overlay two level fours for any kind of plays, whether it's Duo Drive, Nader, or even potential like Exciton, since he's going to go second in a bit. It checks all that, right? It makes them commit their bodies and out to those two bodies because they have to, commit a summon, and we negate that summon and banish that monster. So it's quite a hurtful board once we do get where we need to be, and we're 100% going to get where we need to be with the setup, and he's low on gas essentially at this point. I think the reason I called Fiendsmith Tract is just because I wanted to minimize his lines of play. I've also seen a lot of players, especially in person at my locals, they end up using their Ice Ryzeal or like any of their light monsters in correlation with their Necroquip Princess at some point through the Fiendsmith lines, and they end up making a light and dark Chaos Angel. So definitely be careful from that because our deck, the only out that it has for that situation, a light and dark Chaos Angel, is the trap. And in a lot of cases, you want to actually use the trap to maybe like clear out some bodies or like I don't know, clear out some non-engine or like some set cards on the field or like to recur back some of your engine. It's a very, very, very tight matchup, and I find there's very little room for mistakes. Okay, so we go for barrier, and I believe here I end up what I end up adding. Oh, here I end up actually adding the Skull Guardian because sorry, the Seraph because I didn't add it off the first skull that was summoned, so I called that out and I have to resolve. And then off the barrier, we ended up adding the blessing, so that way we can definitely set up that Cerevis, solemn warning looped line, which is going to give us like essentially two solemn warnings for their extra deck summons. So I play the blessings, then with the blessings, I go for Skull Guardian that he popped, and then I go for the ritual play, putting back the Skull Guardian, it looks like in the graveyard, which was pretty cool. Like it was kind of quick thinking. So really like the end board here is just two Cerevis, Omni Negate, and then the trap that's been set. And then we pass back. Oh, I feel like this is a misplay, guys. Feel free to comment below. I ended up going here into Dynamundo because I wanted two barriers on the field. I was worried about the fact that he was going to get access to a bonfire. I was worried that he was just going to top deck like X Ryzeal or just something else, like another bonfire, and then be able to like with X essentially negate the barrier. I find like the scary part about the Ryzeal Fiendsmith deck is like one barrier sometimes is not enough. Like when in doubt, you're guys gonna see in game three, like when in doubt, if your blessings or your trap set has no additional value, they can't give you any additional value in the game, just set up another barrier, right? Like get two condoms on. Because what this means is they're gonna have to play in a way where like they're gonna have to go after your back row first before they can even touch any of your interruptions that live in the front row, such as your Omni Negate and your Cerebus. So I end up going down. I do give him a draw, and exactly that happens. He draws into another bonfire, which is bad because in my mind, I was going to save the Skull Garden for his non-engine, which is bonfire, but then he's going to go into the other one because we're negating the activation, and he can only needs to activate. He can't activate only one per turn, so he can actually go again. So that was, I feel like a little bit of a misplay on my part. I got a little bit greedy, but I really wanted to get the other barrier up. Just because in a simplified game state after resolving tactics, which was a complete god card in this scenario, I felt like it was a safe bet. And at the end of the day, I still won this round. But we did play into that Fuvos, and then he top decks an X Ryzeal anyways. So in essence, yeah, in essence, actually, it pays off because he now has to waste his X Ryzeal. His aggregator send is not going to actually hit the barrier and mess up our board integrity. And he's going to essentially have to commit both his bonfires for the cost of the one Omni Negate. So, in essence, actually was the correct play. But, like, let that sink in, guys. We invested so much of our resources just to basically outplay them, outplay their engine. Like it's hard. I find it very, very hard, and I'm definitely open to some comments and feedback in terms of how I could be playing better. Because I do have an upcoming regional with this deck. Okay, so it looks like here we go Dynamondo, we bring back Cerevis, and then Low comes back out. Low sets us up with our second condom, which is our barrier of the voiceless voice. He goes bonfire, we right away negate it. In our minds, I think we're taking Ryzeal Cross as essentially like a brick, but he does get a draw one, but like who cares? That draw one could be literally anything. So he goes Ice Ryzeal. We let him add. We see what he adds. He goes for ice. Here, I believe I popped the bodies just to clear them out because now all we know he's got ice. That's it, right? Like he only has ice that we know of. And obviously his cross. We don't know the bonfire, we don't know the X. So he goes across here, and then he sends back his two Ryzeal monsters, and he draws Ash Blossom, so it was a dud in essence. Like he's not gonna be able to hurt us with that this turn. He needed to see like engine or like Fiendsmith stuff to basically do some like crazy stuff. He goes Bonfire. I was kind of thinking about it, and then he did it. So he goes two Ice Ryzeals. Then he goes X'd and dumps the Duo Drive because he knows he can't go X'd to. I was actually surprised here. I was surprised he didn't go X to like stop blessings because at least Cerevis now is no longer two Cerevis, it's just one. Here I feel like I said thinking the summon, I did negate it. I called it correct, but ideally I feel like I should have waited until um the actual Xyz monster that might come out of that summon. But I called it right. I kind of was like feeling him out and getting a sense of like what's like how his hand economy looks. I did take a gamble there, no doubt about it. But yeah, it paid off and we got the win. So here we go second, and he's got full access to engine as well as the Fiendsmith engraver line of play with like Fiendsmith stuff. He's got his thrust. He has two hand traps. It's kind of a god hand, arguably. We've got an Ash Blossom, we got a Nibiru. Nibiru is a god card in this format, especially against Malice guys. Talents low as well as Blessing, so I would say like one unplayable card. So he leads with his Fiendsmith stuff. They always do because they don't want to get locked, and it baits out hand traps, right? I think I commit my Nibiru to the Fiendsmith stuff just because I know I have one starter and I just can't handle dealing with the Desiree if I only have that one starter that I know of. Comment below if this was correct. I felt like it was probably the best bet. He also actually committed a X Ryzeal as well. He committed, it looks like a normal summon, which was nice. I don't know why he did that, but I think he was like noob testing me. Then he goes for his two level sixes. Obviously, didn't want to play into like any kind of shenanigans with like Caesar, so we immediately have to Nibiru there. You kind of have to, so we give him the token and defense. I believe he goes thrust here, and we kind of wanted to Ash just to stop the fact that he could just basically tutor out a dimensional barrier, basically just FTK us that way. So we end up ashing the thrust. And then he goes sword, he goes full combo. So he's got two hand traps, two level four bodies, he goes aggregator, he goes duo, he goes full combo, he goes for the node, goes for the cross. Okay, no plug-in looks like. Then he goes for his detonator. Then he adds with the detonator his mirror logic to the detonator, so that way it's a pop and a negate. So it's three pops, one negate, and then look at that. This is what pissed me off. He used his Ryzeal Cross to draw one and it was dimensional barrier. So ashing the thrust was just kind of a waste, but you kind of had to, right? Because this hand is just completely unplayable unless he top decks it, right? This hand is just unplayable. What are we gonna do? Go normal low, barrier, odd, it just gets popped by detonator. Okay. So we were basically saving the talents to be able to steal his detonator and then, out the negate, out the pops to be able to go low into what do you call it? The barrier. Here, when I top decked Nadir Servant, I was like over the moon. I was super, super happy because it knew that I knew I was gonna be able to interact with his board and I was gonna be able to essentially try and out maybe like the back row or out the cross with the help of like Nadir Servant's like board breaking abilities and its ability to essentially like fix your hands and go into engine. So yeah, let's watch what I do. It looks like I start with Nadir. I check for Ash because if this doesn't resolve, it's just kind of GG's as is. Like the only thing I can think of that might work is Talon's draw. Like Talon's take, then play low, but then you're gonna get fooded by the barrier and obviously his um what do you call it? His Fiendsmith in Paradise Send, no, his Desiree Send from extra deck using the help of Fiendsmith in Paradise. So that's why I find this deck so annoying. Homeboy Triff just built something completely obnoxious and really hard to deal with. Um, that's why it's hard. Like I feel like if it was just the rise of the board, it's enough to deal with. Like Nadir on its own cracks, Ryzeal Cross, it cracks into Detonator, no problem. The problem is the Fiendsmith stuff as well, guys. It's a really, really big problem. So we go Antes here, and I think we end up targeting his Ryzeal Cross. So he goes Detonator, pop the Nibiru for some reason. And then he goes chains the Requiem to bring out like Lacrima. And then he goes Cross just to save his Cross itself because he doesn't want it to hit the grave because there's no way he could get it back if it does. And then he has Lacrima his Lacrima sends Fiendsmith in Paradise, which now means he's got essentially a pop because he can just send his Fiendsmith's Desiree from extra deck to grave to pop something. So here we decide to take, you kind of have to just because he has a negate and a pop on this. Like we can no longer work through that because if we go low, gets popped. Actually, hold on, let's pause. I feel like maybe here the right play was to go low. He might pop low, but he may not. Oh no, he'll pop low, low resolves, then he'll go aggregator negate. And then all of a sudden, Fiendsmith in Paradise just trades 1-for-1 with Maximus. I think either way, I was just completely gassed out because of this Fiendsmith in Paradise. But then, I mean, let's get real. There's dimensional barrier set. I wasn't winning this. Anyway, so he ends up popping Muriel Logic. Wait, what did he do here? I don't know. It doesn't matter. I take his detonator. It could have been like a good, I don't know, body for something. I mean, we are locked under Nadir, so we can't do anything with that. I was gonna use it as a beat stick. Um, Reality is though, it's getting like really hard here just because he still has the hand traps, he's still got the set barrier. Like it's just a lot, guys. Like it's a lot of stuff that you have to deal with Fiendsmith and Ryzeal. So here we go. Obviously into our Maximus, he just pops it. Yeah, very correct. And then he Veilers it and I scoop it up. But I mean, he had an Ogre and a D-Barrier set. It was just completely unwinnable. And we were locked out of our extra deck, so no Typhon and all that stuff. Cool. So then we go into the game three. Pay attention to the chat, guys. You start talking a lot of shit my way, all right? We start talking a lot of shit and we call Judge on his ass. We call the cops the snitch. And yeah, we just keep telling him to, to chill out and calm down and just have fun. Like I was just trying to get this guy to calm down. He needs to go outside and touch grass. So right out the get-go, looks like I lead with pre-prep. He goes for the Ash Blossom, so that's fine. So he's got Ash Blossom, Lancia, Veiler. So it's a pretty cracked hand. Full combo for Ryzeal with Bonfire as well as Fiendsmith's Track. So he has access to both engines. So it's quite a lot that we're dealing with here. Okay. Immediately go with a thrust, check for some other hand traps. Obviously, nothing interacts with us, so we set the barrier right off the get-go. Barrier in this case is definitely going to interact with his Ryzeal stuff. We don't want him to get access to his Ryzeal stuff this turn. So that way, all our stuff, in essence, is going to try to engage with his Fiendsmith stuff. Here, I believe he decides to go. So I draw one, and it was pretty godly draw. It was the Saphira. I believe I'm playing two copies, but I do like three. You guys know how it is. She's got great legs. Then he goes Lancia here because he doesn't want me to actually special summon the Maximus from hand on the next chain. And then I go Saphira because I basically already checked for Ash Blossom. So in my mind, it was like completely fair game to go Saphira, add Saravis, just to insulate my lines of play on the crackback. Because here we're just gonna bankroll with Dimensional Barrier. That's literally what we're doing. We're setting one, passing. We told him, all right, bro, go off king, right? Go off queen. Let's see what you got. So he goes track. We say that's fine. We tell him to go off. He goes into his Fiendsmith stuff. Sure, bro, you do what you gotta do. You do Fiendsmith. I was hoping here that he goes into like some kind of Chaos Angel to like preemptively bait out the um barrier. He does not. So he gets two bodies. We let him search his X because we want to make sure we know what he's getting before we bury. Then we bury here so he doesn't like get into anything. Here he basically just doesn't have enough to like push for game. He keeps the X Ryzeal because he doesn't want to waste its board breaking capability. So either way, it gets me down to 1,000 or even 500. But he can't game me. He can't like punch for a game. So we essentially survive, and that was essentially like his Achilles heel is that set thrust, the set barrier off the thrust. Cool. So he goes Desiree. We let that resolve. He goes into Desaria, which is fine. And here it gets pretty exciting because he has two hand traps, Desiree, as well as a potential draw off the Veiler, which is gonna, I think, be meaningful for him. Um, so here I go Dogmatica Maximus, just because the way I was playing is essentially I was playing to all the cards that I drew last turn. That's a tip that I can give you guys is like whatever is known knowledge, lead with that because then you have the element of surprise for all your backup plays, such as the additional thrust, as well as the diviner in this case. So he ends up going effect Veiler. I tell him, okay, chain three, we're gonna go Saravis. Then he has to commit his second Veiler or potentially his Desaria. So he goes, I believe, Veiler for chain link 4, and then he gets a draw. So he does negate the what do you call it? The Maximus. And one of the other benefits that I was thinking about when I led with the Maximus play is I saw the Fiendsmith Desaria, and I didn't know about the hand traps, obviously, but I figured if he was smart, he would kind of have to negate this because what I can essentially do off the dump of Maximus is just break into his board further. I can't see my extra, but like just rest assured, like I've got, things such as like a Malong in there or a Elder Entity, Antas, right? So Antas trades one for one with his Desar, so we can't let this thing resolve. And by essentially negating this and forcing him to go two hand traps down for the cost of my Cerevis as well as the Maximus, he's also negating the effect that locks me out of the extra deck, which is going to be exceptionally useful here. Because we knew that he needed to stop the Maximus right away, because otherwise he just loses the value of his Desiree. And then we just kind of like play freely, especially for the fact that, if we go Diviner, we have a thrust essentially just bridge the gap into like what do you call it? A pre-prep, or maybe like we out our own Maximus and we go another Nadir and play that way, right? So he knew that he needed to essentially stop this, but because we knew he needed to stop it, it actually benefited us in planning our lines because the likelihood of Maximus getting stopped was high, which meant that I could now plan a lot of extra deck related lines of play. So he draws a dud, which is Lori. Okay, no problem. Here I go Saphira. I do end up outing my own Maximus. Here he goes Desiree, which is fine because he knew we had it from last turn. Cool. So now I assume he's out of interactions, but I wanted to just check on that last card that he drew off the princess because I 100% require Diviner to resolve here to go full combo. Diviner on its own, as we know, is full combo, especially when we're not locked out of the extra deck. And so here I check for his hand. I think real good about his deck. And then I essentially tell him, get rid of the X Ryzeal because now I know I'm going to stop his entire Fiendsmith stuff because I'm going to be able to banish Fiendsmith sequence with Chaos Angel. So he's going to stop his entire Fiendsmith lines. So I wasn't worried about him having a Lori because we were going to go full combo anyways. We're going to have a Cerevis. We're going to have um, a Skull Guardian. We're going to have the trap set, everything. Okay, so we get rid of the X, so he doesn't have any access into his Ryzeal engine, and we can basically commit that, okay, you know what? I'm gonna play against him just going off of Fiendsmith control. He's not gonna play Ryzeal. That's essentially the assumption that I made, and the choice that I made essentially. And then here we go Definer, and we start going off. Low comes out. Low gives us our barrier effect. I think real good and long about this. Barrier gets me. Oh, my trap card. Okay, I didn't go blessings. Interesting. Then I go Chaos Angel and I hit the sequence because he's probably just running the one because it's tight. I go to battle. We out the Necro Crypt and we out his last Ryzeal card for engine, which is very key here. I do some damage. I go main two. Here he ends up drawing more Fiendsmith. So this is good stuff for us, right? Because it just means that like he's just gonna be playing Fiendsmith. And that's the thing about the Fiendsmith Ryzeal deck is like there's only so much Ryzeal cards that they can play. And so here I end up going, he ends up trying to go into battle. I tell him end of main, I'll go trap, effect a special or add. We get our load, completing our combo, and then we go into another condom here because I knew he's gonna be playing Fiendsmith. And Fiendsmith Desaria could potentially out our barrier, and then he might have lines into like a Chaos Angel if he did top deck a like a Ryzeal monster, what have you. Here I called him a cheater. I forgot that you can literally add any any Fiendsmith card, and then he can just dump the Lori. I was asking like, oh, you don't have another Lori, bro. Like, what are you doing? Because usually you draw the Lori, you add the Lori off track. So, anyways, gets getting aggravated because I called him a cheater and he calls me an idiot. I was like, okay, dude, just calm down. I'm gonna call judge because you're misbehaving. Like a friggin' weirdo over cards. So I let him here, I think, do his combo. Just because I only have an Omni negate at this point, and then it's basically bankrolling off the barriers. So here he goes, Lacrima, Lacrima dump. I let him waste all his Fiendsmith effects just so I know for sure that he's not going to be able to like just recur bodies out of nowhere and then go for any like shenanigans from there using the bodies. Cool. So we're arguing. He's crying because he's in a losing game state. Here he goes, SP chain one, target barrier. Desaria chain two, target the other barrier. Here we have to negate just to hold the protection. So we negate the Desiree, he keeps his SP, and then he ends up going into looks like a is Fiendsmith's Engraver. Then he goes Engraver just to trap for follow up, but it doesn't matter at this point because we're gonna kill him. He does go Typhon. We absolutely. Ooh, he's actually a cheat, guys. I did not actually go twice into my extra deck. We let him actually summon a Typhon illegally. Because the only thing we actually did was Chaos Angel, was one summon. So he's actually already cheating, right? This guy's a dirtbag, guys. He called me an idiot, and like we missed it. I think for some reason I was thinking that I went into like my Dynamondo, but I guess I didn't. So he's already cheating, but it doesn't matter. We're still gonna beat him anyways. So he ends up going Typhon, and I didn't care because I knew that he potentially had a line into it, even though clearly I wasn't thinking straight that like I didn't actually touch my extra deck twice. Because our prayers of the voiceless voice is engraved to give us that Skull Guardian back on the field if he does out it with Typhon. So he wastes more resources. He outs it, then we go prayers. He changes SP, gets rid of low, but doesn't matter at this point because you can't do anything about the Chaos Angel, which is unaffected. You can't do anything about Skull Guardian, which is 45 because we have another low engraved. He goes end phase, then we go into the low. Then we top deck Ash Blossom. This was the nail in the coffin. This Ash Blossom actually did matter just because he does have the Lacrimal Lines to be able to like essentially like dump a Fiendsmith in Paradise to go Desiree again if he plays. Yeah, he does. He might go Desiree again and like potentially like pop something in the back row because it's the only thing he can like target. So he goes Requiem and then the Dirtbag essentially gets ashed. We out the Typhon with the trap card, so that way our Skull Guardian is now live, and then we just go combo. We go with barrier into blessings, I believe. Yep, there it is. There's the blessings. Blessings into, I think, Saphira from the Banished Pile. I think this is why like Prophecy Wiz tells you guys to play two Saphiras because it's very like recursible back under the effect of blessings. Then we go like that. We add that back from the graveyard, it looks like, after we use it to like negate all those thing. And then we go for a game. We tell him, scoop it up, boy. And then he quits. Then he calls us an idiot. And then we tell him that he's free because he pretty much was. I think the only like major misplay that I feel like I should have been more attentive to there in that round was the Typhon because that was an illegal Typhon, guys. The guy's a cheat. XCKJ, if you're out there, buddy, you're a dirtbag and a cheat, and your mama raised a complete scumbag, so take that up with her. Cool. Let's take a look at the deck, guys, just to round off the video. Hopefully, you enjoyed that match. That's how you beat Ryzeal Fiendsmith. That was a very interactive game, a lot of back and forth. Very, very tough, tough match, I would say. It's a hard matchup. Like Ryzeal is fun on its own. Fiendsmith Ryzeal is a whole other planet, in my opinion. So here's my list. I'm not playing a pure version of like just Dogmatica VV. And hear me out, guys. I've just been experimenting with the Fiendsmith stuff, a very light package of just one Lori, one Engraver, Lacrima, as well as a Trapped, and then the talents. I decided to ease off on the hand traps a little bit with this build, just because I felt like with decks against like Ryzeal or even Malice, you're hand looping yourself with all the hand traps and like you kind of want to see engine and the Feedsmith engine is just like one of the best out there. It just is, guys. Hate to break it to you. And then Talons just ends games going first and breaks into boards going second. It's just is a very, very good card, I think, this format because of Detonator and all the hand traps, obviously, that are in the format. So I went with just 11 hand traps in a deck of 42 Ash, Nibiru, Purge, as well as Impermanence. I find Purge on Duo Drive is just so critical because a lot of times they might have like talents or the cross out, so it doesn't play into talents, and it definitely does not play into cross out because Ryzeal does not play Purge. So more often than not, like I even thought about this, like in the past, we'd see Ash as well as Purge. You always went Ash first and held the Purge for later, but like I feel like if it's Ryzeal, you just go Purge because you don't want to get like talents or crossed out just to have duo drive resolve, and now you're in a completely different game state that what you could have been prior just because they cannot run the target for Purge, right? Like you're essentially insulating yourself against six cards if you actually lead with Purge. Hopefully, I pray for you kings, you voiceless voice kings, that you never open Ash and Purge, but it does happen, unfortunately. We did play the Nadir package just because it trades really well into Ryzeal Detonator as well as if there's an active cross. It just completely breaks both those two cards down because they'll be forced to either use their cross to stop a what do you call it? The Elder Entity Antas, which we're playing in the side, the extra, of course. And then the good news is Dogmatic Maximus doesn't actually trade into uh, Detonator well at all. Maximus always wins because even if they have a Muriel logic under the Ryzeal Detonator, what happens is like you're activating the effect from hand, there's nothing to pop, right? The field's empty. So you summon it and then you use the effect, he's gonna have to pop it, sending the Muriel logic or otherwise. And then the effect is resolving, so it's too Muriel logic essentially will always miss out on timing. So yeah, that's why like you still run the Dear Servant stuff if you have Fiendsmith stuff in there. Like I feel like it's not that bad. Yeah, so we got, your typical stuff. I am playing the two Sephiras, but I feel like threes like is not bad in my opinion. Like I've so many times like I miss having threes to have that consistency, but I felt like this list has just been a lot more well-rounded for me. Maybe I just toss it in for regionals and just hope for the best. But I am only playing 11 hand traps, so I wanted that consistency to be able to see usually two, but more often than not just one hand trap at least, just like interact with duo drive. Because like their boards are breakable for the most part. Like they're not that bad. It also like depends on obviously like their hand traps as well. Yeah, it's like typical build, two pre-prep, two talent, you got the trap, you got the blessing, small Fiendsmith package, just one, and one, four ones. And yeah, nothing to really tell you guys here. It's just very standard list. I would say in the side, we're doing Lancia for the Malice matchup. Playing Perulia. I am siding the old man, and hear me out, guys. I know a lot of you guys cut this, but the old man sided allows you going first to essentially like post side, really double down on your Saravas plays. The Saravas play is going to be really crucial to be able to loop it because the Ryzeal cars just spam out bodies like it's nobody's business. I've had games where if you pop like using the trap two bodies, then you Saravas their first XC summon, it's still not enough. You want to go for your second Saravas. So I find like usually this card actually not only helps me kind of like recur back some of my spells from the grave, but it helps me in like a good tight spot and it just increases the ceiling of the deck. Yes, it's a brick. I'm not going to deny it. But I figured if we're just siding it in post side, it's okay because that means over the longevity, like a big tournament, if we are losing a lot of dice, we're not going to see this guy going first in theory, right? We got the one called by, we got another god card with the thrust, which essentially, man, both those copies that last round really put in work, essentially. Really put in work and help me, solidify the game state to win. And then we do have the one thrust target going first, which is barrier. I thought about DDG, but didn't end up putting it in, or even like a Simul Archfiends just to stop some of the like Malice stuff, some of the Fiendsmith lines, and still kind of like hurt them when it comes to Xyz. But I figured shifter decks, like there's just malice. It's not that big of a deal. Just play under shifter. It's fine. We have lines with the help of pre-prep of rights. But then the other aspect is like I really just did not want to deal with detonator because that card puts so much pressure against us as the voiceless players because it means you just can't lead with a lot of your barrier plays or like your back row um, plays when you're working into a board with a detonator. I've got two solemn judgments as well as Tikaboo, and then I've got my all my draw cards for Nadir Servant, which is the Farajit. We've got the Herald, Garura, and obviously we've got the one Entes. I do miss playing two. It comes up. I am playing a Malong because sometimes you will want to be able to out a detonator back to the deck because it does have inherent protection from card effect, so Entas doesn't actually trade into it. So Malong was kind of essential here. Also, Malong, if you're facing like a Centurion player, Malong can actually trade really well with their field spell. Because if you go into main and just go into your servant, they don't have Ash. You send Malong, they're always going to miss time and to be able to synchro summon into their Almi negate on your turn with the help of Crimson. Because their field spell is going to be spun back to their hand before they can even commit their quick sync on your turn. So that's why I'm playing that card. Chaos Angel is absolute mandatory in this deck because in this build particularly, we can actually build, if we go into Necroquip as well as Lacrima on field, you can actually go into a light and dark Chaos Angel, but more often than we are going with the Trias as well as the low to make it just a light Chaos Angel, which arguably is still better than the dark version. The dark one just doesn't die to battle, but you can out it. The light one just can't be outed by activated monster effects, which is really, really key here. Oh wait, hold on. I think it can't be outed by yeah, unaffected by activated monster effects. Cool. We do play the Typhon. You still need Typhon, I feel like, to out Detonator in some cases to kind of like go into a grind game state with your opponent after like you've wasted all their materials on it. We got the Mundo, we got the Requiem sequence, Closed Moon, as well as the Enema, and then SP, and yeah, that's it for the deck. One note about the Enema is just like sometimes I find I get a lot of these lows out on field. So it's good to just kind of have a line into SP quickly without having to like out something else from the deck. Enema is just Anima, like it's just a really good card. You may as well just play it. Um, oh, and then Closed Moon, I have a lot of game states where like, more often than not, like I want to lead with Fiendsmith if I have it, just because it baits out hand traps. That's the theory with this deck is it forces like a simplified game state a lot better than just pure voiceless, I find. So what ends up happening is I lead with the voiceless stuff because I definitely will be getting locked from the extra deck with Nadir, so you always lead with it. It baits out hand traps. You get to understand like their hand economy if they have like Nibiru or like anything like an Imperm. It just baits a lot of stuff out, and then you get a sense of like how much is actually left in their hand, and then you just play voiceless. So because we're cutting like the Odd Eyes card that negates the spell effect for like Cerevis, for the Old Man, for like the Fiendsmith stuff, it's the ceiling's not only higher, but what ends up happening is your opponent is forced to interact. So you're forcing interactions that are not against your voiceless engine. And what's happening in essence is you're just playing voiceless a lot more freely. And you're able to actually use those interrupts that we get from the voiceless board, you with Skull Guardian, with like Cerevis a lot more seamlessly just because they're committing all those hand traps against you. So yeah, that's the value of the Fiendsmith stuff that nobody really talks about. Like, can it brick? Absolutely, but I mean, let's get real. Voiceless voice bricks, regardless of whether or not we're playing Fiendsmith. Right? Like, if I open Fiendsmith and then just hand traps, I'm probably living. If I'm also opening up like some bricks, like maybe like a Nibiru or like a Trias or a Maxus, I'm probably gonna live because I saw the one card combo Engraver or even the Lori or the Tract. Rather than you just play like Fiendsmith Control if it's not the greatest hand. It's just like hand traps, engraver, you play Fiendsmith Control with hand traps. Like you'll be fine. And then like you'll top deck your one card combo, like your Nadir the turn after, like your Saphira or your Beer, then you just go off from there. And then you're ultimately also surprising your opponent. Like, oh my God, like I thought he was playing Fiendsmith, now he's playing Voiceless and like Nadir. Like, what do I stop? Right? They're going to be overwhelmed. There's going to be so much stuff for them to interact with, and they're going to make mistakes as a result in like a high tiered event. Anyways, that's just my theory. Let me know in the comments below if this is complete ass, if this is terrible, if I should play pure. Like I have all the cards for pure, it's fine. This is where I'm leaning towards because it's a higher ceiling and it has that added feature of like the element of surprise and being able to waste a lot of resources from our opponent when we absolutely are in a hand trap heavy format. Um, yeah, so that's it. I think the last thing I'll also say is the Solemn Judgments. These are not going anywhere. This is like probably the best card in the deck. I've had games where I like resolved all three. I ended up on top. I kid you not, guys. I'll show it to you later, but I resolved all three in the past. And then I went with Perulia instead of Fuvalos just because Perulia tends to cook quickly and early in comparison to Fuvalos against like whatchamacallit, the Ryzeal. Like Ryzeal, they immediately have to summon a body from the hand and you get a draw, right? Instead of having to wait until Fuvalos where they go detonator past and you're drawing at the end. Right? I kind of want to just like draw earlier. Perulia is also really good at just shutting down turns against that like Fiendsmith Cash Tiro deck as well. I find it's actually the better of the two right now. Doesn't do very much against Malice, but this is why we're playing the Lancias in the side for Malice, as well as we got the two Nibs in main as well for Malice as well. So yeah, that's it for me today, guys. Let me know what you guys think of my list and the gameplay that we went over with that scumbag that was calling us an idiot, but we ended up beating him just the same with our beloved Voiceless Voice. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. This is my list so far. I'm happy to, share this list out. Feel free to hit me up on like Facebook or Instagram at Yugi Skull. And yeah, make sure to smash that like button. I'll see you guys at the next video. Thank you so much.